Brace yourself. Get it passed up anytime now. Collect yourself. Cause it'll never be the same in this sad, sad world. Walk around a lot a bit, trying to make the pieces fit to a puzzle with a million missing pieces. When I'm feeling fine is when I discover that I'm afraid to blow my cover, and there's something very wrong with this. So sit back in your hole.
So good morning, everybody. Good to be with you today. So today we begin the second unit of our course. This unit I call Pre-Arthurian Literature. So now we're actually starting our deep dive into these great literary masterpieces. And we're going back today as far as one can possibly go in the world of literature. Because today we're going to begin reading the oldest written story ever discovered, quite possibly simply the first written story ever, a story known as the Epic of Gilgamesh. The story comes to us from the Sumerians. The Sumerian civilization is the first. Elian, sit up. The Sumerian civilization is the first civilization. All right? For the vast majority of our time on this earth, how did we live? What was our lifestyle like, Tyler?
Caves and stuff?
Caves and stuff. We were hunter-gatherers. Now, hunter-gatherers do two things. Hunting and gathering. Our ancestors, the majority of people who ever lived, they're back here. The majority of people who ever lived didn't settle down in one place. They roamed around. Why did they roam around? What are they looking for? Food. They roamed around because food has legs. All right? Food has legs, so they had to have legs. One of the results of this is that our human ancestors didn't have large populations like we have or anything close to it. Because you can't lead 1 million people, 10 million people, 100 million people together to chase animals and to gather berries and things. So human population for the first 240,000 years of our time on the earth were these very small bands of people, probably between 20 and 150 people. You would sometimes encounter people from other bands that were from a little bit further away, but there's a very limited in the amount of communication you could have with people at long distances. Very limited in the amount of ideas that you'd be exposed to. And so change in society, progress in society, developments in technology were super slow. If you lived 100,000 years ago, your life was almost identical to a person who lived 100,000 years before that. Whereas my life has almost nothing in common with the life my grandfather lived when he was 44 years old. All right, so we live in a time of change, progress, development. It wasn't like that for most of our time on the earth. And the big move that made it possible for us to develop into the society we have now was the move of civilization, the discovery of agriculture, and then people settle, and then people build permanent settlements, cities. The Latin civitas, which means city, is the root word of civilization. And the first people to do that were a people who lived in the region of Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, people that we know as the Sumerians. They organized their civilization, the very first, into independent city-states. And the first of those city-states, so the first major city of ever, is the city of Uruk. Uruk today is a place known as Warraq in Iraq. It was these brilliant, game-changing people that gave us such things as writing, as currency, as an established government. Kingship is one of their inventions. Education is one of their inventions. Military force. All of the things that we rely on for stability are the heritage we get, particularly from the Sumerian people. On the screen here, you see I've just a little bit of a timeline to put things in perspective. So our species pops up somewhere between 350,000 and 250,000 years ago. And we spend most of our time, the vast majority of human history is spent in our common homeland, which is Africa, because humanity is an African species. About 80,000 years BC is when people begin the first successful migration out of Africa and settle the rest of the continents. But it's not till 5000 BC that the very first city, Uruk, is founded. Writing is invented around 3200 BC, and about 300 years later is when Gilgamesh, a king of Uruk who is probably real. Notice I didn't say definitely real, probably real. Does that mean that everything we're going to read about in the day is going to be real? Well, probably not factual, but there does seem to be a historical figure at the heart of this text. He lives around 2900 BC. That puts Gilgamesh's life at 300 years before the building of the Great Pyramids. It's 600 years before the founding of the first empire. The first conquering emperor was Sargon of Akkad. It puts him living about 800 years before the writing of the text. So the text develops through orature over 8 centuries before we get what we have here. Put that in wider context, if you're familiar with the stories of the patriarch Abraham, he lives 1,000 years after Gilgamesh. The Exodus from Egypt and the 10 Commandments, parting of the seas, the plagues, all that is set around 1350 BC, at which point Gilgamesh was already ancient history because he lived 1,600 years before the Exodus. The Trojan War, 1250 BC. So Gilgamesh is, I got to do on-the-spot math, like 1,700. Gilgamesh is dead 1,700 years before Achilles ever picks up his spear. The Iliad is written in 750 BC. So we're more than 2,000 years after the time of Gilgamesh, and we're like 1,800 years after the writing of Gilgamesh. Boy, Alexander is just born yesterday compared to Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh lives 2,600 years before Alexander. He lives 2,900 years before Augustus or Christ. He lives 3,000 years before King Arthur or the fall of Rome. He lives 3,100 years before the birth of the prophet Muhammad. He lives 4,000 years before the first Nirvana album, or in 2007, the birth of Sandra. Sandra waved to everybody. Right, 2007, Sandra? Yeah, so Gilgamesh is older than even Sandra. We would still be digging around in the dirt for worms with sticks if it weren't for the civilization that produced this epic. But it wasn't all positive. So hunter-gatherers, cavemen. You're right, I'm right. Cavemen didn't have books, they didn't have schools, they didn't have defensive militaries, they didn't have priesthoods, they didn't build walls, they didn't have very many temples. But they didn't have, they had drawings, they had awesome drawings. So he brings up the cool drawings. That demonstrates that, so they didn't have those things not because they were inferior. You go back in time 200,000 years, and the people are just people. They just are born into a different social structure. The social structures we have just hadn't developed, hadn't evolved yet. But there's some other things that cavemen don't have. They don't have masters and slaves. They don't have kings that dominate over you. They don't have nearly as many pandemic diseases because they're not all living in close quarters with each other, spreading viruses that they can't see because they have no idea where they come from. Cavemen eat healthier. Civilized people have more reliable access to food, more reliable access to less healthy food. Cavemen, hunter-gatherers, it's harder to find the food, but they eat a lot healthier. And so archaeologists and anthropologists who study the remains of Sumerians and other early civilized people find that the people are in much poorer physical shape than their cavemen ancestors or from the people that didn't settle. And there's a lost sense of innocence that happens when civilization is formed, because hunter-gatherers have to be incredibly well attuned to the rhythms and the cycles of nature. And like I said, they are us. They have the same sort of rational, philosophical, inquiring minds, the same spiritual passions and drives and dreams. And so hunter-gatherers, to the best we can reconstruct what their worldviews are, tend to see powerful spiritual forces woven through nature, and tend to see those spiritual forces as nurturing, as healing and feeding. It's grossly oversimplified, but early civilizations tend to see the spiritual forces as dominating kings and queens in the sky, and us as their slaves. There's a sense in which, though they couldn't see the future, the first civilizations, the difficulties that they endured, the hardships that civilization gave them, were a sacrifice for us. Our life would be so much poorer if it weren't for the changes they made, and yet those changes made their lived experiences often much more difficult. But one of those changes was writing, and then eventually literature. And notice, writing is invented around 3200, and the first written story is 1,000 years later. If you've taken my classical studies course, or a couple of you are in it right now, you know that the Mycenaean Greeks left a bunch of writing, but it was all what? All receipts. All they did was write receipts. Why? Because that's what writing was invented for. That's how it evolved. So like all the writing for the first 1,000 years is receipts, until somebody gets the brilliant idea, wait a minute, instead of using this to keep track of how many figs there are or how many slaves I have, I can use it to create beauty. I can use it to bring people into my imagination. I can use it to create thoughts and emotions in others. We're storytelling animals, aren't we? Well, then I can use this same technology I've been using to keep track of how many bulls and goats I have, to transport people to another reality. So let's get transported to this reality. Go ahead and open up the reading, the Epic of Gilgamesh. And when it's your turn to read, you'll just come join me at the microphone. Did you say why? Oh, well, I'll just put it in front of you because you're sitting right there. All right, give me a second. I told you to open it up and then failed to open it up. All right, shall we? The Epic of Gilgamesh. Prologue. Gilgamesh, king in Uruk. Oh, there are pictures. Hang on. Yeah, there's pictures. I will proclaim to the world the deeds of Gilgamesh. This was the man to whom all things were known. This was the king who knew the countries of the world. He was wise. He saw mysteries and knew secret things. He brought us a tale of the days before the flood. He went on a long journey, was weary, worn out with labor. Returning, he rested. He engraved on a stone the whole story. When the gods created Gilgamesh, they gave him a perfect body. Shemesh, the glorious sun, endowed him with beauty. Adad, the god of the storm, endowed him with courage. The great gods made his beauty perfect, surpassing all others, terrifying like a wild bull. 2/3 they made him god, and 1/3 man. In Uruk, he built walls, a great rampart. and the temple of blessed Eanna for the god of the firmament Anu, and for Ishtar, the goddess of love. So Eanna is the name of the temple dedicated to the gods Anu and Ishtar. Look at it still today. The outer wall where the cornice runs, it shines with the brilliance of copper, and the inner wall it has no equal. Touch the threshold that is ancient. Approach Eanna, the dwelling of Ishtar, our lady of love and war, the like of which no latter-day king, no man alive can equal. Those who've already studied Homer with me, those language like that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Climb upon the wall of Uruk. Walk along it, I say. Regard the foundation terrace and examine the masonry. Is it not burnt brick and good? The 7 sages laid the foundation. So just to pause with the story for a second, being the first work of literature, this is the one thing that has directly influenced everything that came after it. And so you can see, I'm going to show you one parallel. So here you have this, we're celebrating the greatness of Uruk and its connection with the gods. Compare how he described Uruk to this text from the Hebrew Psalms. Psalm 48. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised in the city of our God. His holy mountain, beautiful in elevation, is the joy of all the earth. Mount Zion in the far north, the city of the great King. Within her citadels, God has made himself known as a fortress. As we have heard, so have we seen in the city of the Lord of hosts, in the city of our God, which God will establish forever. We have thought on your steadfast love, O God, in the midst of your temple. Walk about Zion, go around her, number her towers, consider her ramparts, go through her citadels, that you may tell the next generation that this is our God forever and ever. He will guide us forever. By the time this psalm is written, Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh is more than 1,000 years old. What can I do for you?
Is Literary Club happening this year?
To be determined. It's on the students, and they haven't organized it yet.
Okay. Should I put it on the club survey?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go back into the text. Chapter 1, the coming of Enkidu. Gilgamesh went abroad in the world, but he met with none who could withstand his arms till he came to Uruk. But the men of Uruk muttered in their houses. I didn't make anyone the men of Uruk, did I? Gilgamesh sounds the tocsin. The tocsin is an alarm bell. Gilgamesh sounds the alarm bell for his amusement. His arrogance has no bounds by day or night. No son is left with his father, for Gilgamesh takes them all, even the children. Yet the king should be a shepherd to his people. His lust leaves no virgin to her lover, neither the warrior's daughter nor the wife of the noble. Yet this is the shepherd of the city, wise, comely, and resolute. Those people are complaining. He's got this mighty Gilgamesh, but he knows exactly how mighty he is. And he takes your children, he takes your sons to be his servants, to fight his wars, to do his battle. That didn't happen in caveman times. He takes your daughters to please him in the bedroom. That didn't happen in caveman times. The gods heard their lament. The gods of heaven cried to the Lord of Uruk, to Anu, the god of Uruk.
A goddess made him, strong as a savage bull, none can withstand his arms. No son is left with his father, for Gilgamesh takes them all. And is this the king, the shepherd of his people? His lust leaves no virgin to her lover, neither the warrior's daughter, nor the wife of the noble.
When Anu had heard their lamentation, the gods cried to Aruru, the goddess of creation. You can be heard too.
All right. You made him, O Aruru, now create his equal. Let it be as like him as his own reflection, his second self, stormy heart for stormy heart. Let them contend together and leave Uruk in quiet.
So the goddess conceived an image in her mind, and it was the stuff of Anu of the firmament. She dipped her hands in water and pinched off clay. She let it fall in the wilderness, and noble Enkidu was created. There was virtue in him of the god of war, of Ninurta himself. His body was rough. He had long hair like a woman's. It waved like the hair of Nisaba, the goddess of corn. His body was covered with matted hair like Samukhans, the god of cattle. He was innocent of mankind. He knew nothing of the cultivated land. So what is Enkidu? He's innocent. He's hairy. He's rough. He's a caveman. All right. So there is this memory of we had a more innocent and a more tough past. You know, our ancestors were different. So now she's created. It's a super caveman in the myth, but yeah, she's made a caveman. Enkidu ate grass in the hills with the gazelle and lurked with wild beasts at the water holes. He had joy of the water with the herds of wild game. But there was a trapper who met him one day face to face at the drinking hole. I didn't give the trapper role to anybody, did I? Y'all got to put your hands up. For the wild game had entered his territory. On 3 days he met him face to face, and the trapper was frozen with fear. He went back to his house with the game that he had caught, and he was dumb. Ooh, like you. He was dumb, benumbed with terror. His face was altered like that of one who has made a long journey. With awe in his heart, we know what a trapper is, right? A hunter, he catches animals, yeah? With awe in his heart, the trapper spoke to his father. Father, there is a man unlike any other who comes down from the hills. He is the strongest in the world. He's like an immortal from heaven. He ranges over the hills with wild beasts and eats grass. He ranges through your land and comes down to the wells. I'm afraid and dare not go near him. He fills in the pits which I dig and tears up my traps set for the game. He helps the beasts to escape, and now they slip through my fingers. His father opened his mouth and said to the trapper, Miles, be the father.
My son in Uruk lives, Gilgamesh. No one has ever prevailed against him. He is strong as a star from heaven. Go to Uruk, find Gilgamesh. Extol the strength of this wild man. Ask him to give you a harlot, a wanton from the temple of love. Return with her, and let her woman's power overpower this man. When next he comes down to drink at the wells, she will be there, stripped naked. And when he sees her beckoning, he will embrace her, and then the wild beast will reject him.
So you got this wild man. By the way, the wild man of the forest is going to be a recurring theme in literature for the next 3,000 years. Once we're into Arthurian literature, the wild man theme is still there. In the Middle Ages, they called him the Green Man. One of the stories we'll read is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. The Green Knight is basically what Enkidu becomes when the story has been told for 3,000 years. So you got this wild man, all right? And he's getting into your crops because he's a wild man. He don't care. You say, this is my land, and any hunter-gatherer, and this has happened every time, by the way, the conquest and colonization of the United States was in large part civilized people encountering hunter-gatherers. And the civilized people set up shop, build walls, and said, this is our land now. And the hunter-gatherers, the native people, said, what do you mean this is your land? You didn't make the land made you. You can't own land. There's no concept of property amongst hunter-gatherers. So Enkidu doesn't care that you think these cows are yours. They're cows. You didn't give birth to them. So the trapper and his father cook up a scheme. We're going to go to the king. We're going to go to Gilgamesh. And we're going to ask him to send us, what's he going to send us? A woman, a harlot. A harlot is a prostitute. But you shouldn't hear picture like a methed out streetwalker. In the religions of Sumeria, part of the worship of the Sumerian gods involved sexual rituals. So Sumerian temples would have priestesses that were temple prostitutes. And the act of engaging in sex with these priestesses was an act of worship for the gods and goddesses, especially the goddess Ishtar or Inanna, who is the god of beauty. So in this cultural context, the harlot is not a figure of shame and disgrace. The harlot has an important role to play in their everyday society, and so she's going to have an important role to play in the story. So back to the story. So the trapper set out on his journey to Uruk and addressed himself to Gilgamesh, saying, A man unlike any other is roaming now in the pastures. He is as strong as a star from heaven, and I am afraid to approach him. He helps the wild game to escape. He fills in my pits and pulls up my traps. Gilgamesh, that's you, right, Maggot, right? Are you lost?
Yeah.
Gilgamesh
said.
Okay. Gilgamesh said,
Trapper, go back. Take with you a harlot, a child of pleasure. At the drinking hole she will strip, and when he sees her beckoning, he will embrace her, and the game of the wilderness will surely reject him.
one thing you see happening here, again, is this is the very first work of literature ever, and already one of the key themes of the first work of literature ever is the weaponization of female sexuality. A sense that it'll be obvious to any reader what a man finds appealing about female sexuality. But watch out, they're going to use that. They're going to use that to break you, to conquer you, to drain your power. That happens over and over and over again. In the Iliad, classical studies alumni remember when Hera, basically roofies Zeus and sleeps with him in order to, sorry, those taking classical studies now, that's a bit of a spoiler. Okay. Now the trapper returns. We're back in the text. Now the trapper returned, taking the harlot with him. After a 3 days' journey, they came to the drinking hole, and there they sat down. The harlot and the trapper sat facing one another and waited for the game to come. For the first day and for the second day, the two sat waiting. But on the third day, the herds came. They came down to drink, and Enkidu was with them. The small wild creatures of the plains were glad of the water, and Enkidu with them, who ate grass with the gazelle and was born in the hills. And she saw him, the savage man, come from far off in the hills. The trapper spoke to her. There he is. Now, woman, make your breast bare. Have no shame. Dude, nobody just record me saying only that in my class. Now, woman, make your breast bare. Have no shame. Do not delay, but welcome his love. Let him see you naked. Let him possess your body. When he comes near, uncover yourself and lie within him. Teach him, the savage man, your woman's art. For when he murmurs love to you, the wild beasts that shared his life in the hills will reject him. She was not ashamed to take him. She made herself naked and welcomed his eagerness. As he lay on her murmuring love, she taught him the woman's art. For 6 days and 7 nights they lay together. For Enkidu had forgotten his home in the hills. So for some reason now he's not thinking about his home and catching other people's cows. I don't know how that happened. For Enkidu had forgotten his home in the hills. But when he was satisfied, he went back to the wild beasts. Then when the gazelles saw him, they bolted away. When the wild creatures saw him, they fled. Enkidu would have followed, but his body was bound as though with a cord. His knees gave way when he started to run. His swiftness was gone. And now the wild creatures had all fled away. Enkidu was grown weak, for wisdom was in him, and the thoughts of a man were in his heart. So he returned and sat down at the woman's feet and listened intently to what she said. That's Tyler is the prostitute.
Do a girl's voice.
You were wise, Enkidu, and now you've become like a god. Why do you want to run wild with the beasts in the hills? Come with me. I will take you to strong-walled Uruk, to the blessed temple of Ishtar and Anu, of love and of heaven. There Gilgamesh lives, who is very strong, and like a wild bull he lords it over men.
When she had spoken, Enkidu was pleased. He longed for a comrade, for one who would understand his heart. Come, who's Enkidu? Yeah, come on, join me. Take the mic.
Come, woman, and take... Oh, my bad. Come, woman, and take me to that holy temple, to the house of Anu and of Ishtar, and to the place where Gilgamesh lords it over the people. I will challenge him boldly. I will cry out aloud in Uruk. I am the strongest here, and I have come to challenge the old order, and I am he who was born in the hills. I am he who is the strongest of all.
So there's a parallel there to the Incredible Hulk, who's always saying Hulk is strongest one there is. So, yeah. And she said,
Let us go and let him see your face. I know very well where Gilgamesh is in Great Uruk. O Enkidu, there are all the people dressed in their gorgeous robes. Every day is a holiday. The young men and girls are wonderful to see. How sweet they smell. All the great ones are roused from their beds. O Enkidu, you who love life, I will show you Gilgamesh, a man of many moods. You shall look at him well in his radiant manhood. His body is perfect in strength and maturity. He never rests by night or day. He is stronger than you, so leave your boasting. Shamash, the glorious sun, has given favors to Gilgamesh, and Anu of the heavens, and Enlil, and Ea, who is wise and has given him deep understanding. I tell you, even before you have left the wilderness, Gilgamesh will know in his dreams that you are coming.
now, so she's telling us just go see Gilgamesh. Go see Gilgamesh. Go enjoy a real city. Go smell the girls, and then everything will change for you. If you've just grown up in the forest, I mean, it would be an improvement, I'm sure. Now, Gilgamesh got up to tell his dream to his mother, Ninsun, one of the wise gods.
Mother, last night I had a dream. I was full of joy. The young heroes were around me, and I walked through the night under the stars of the firmament. And a meteor of the stuff of Anu, fell down from heaven. I tried to lift it, but it proved too heavy. All the people of Uruk came around to see it. The common people jostled, and the nobles thronged to kiss its feet. And to me, its attraction was like the love of a woman. They helped me. I braced my forehead, and I raised it. I raised it with tongs and brought it to you. And you yourself pronounced it my brother.
Then Ninsun. Someone want to be Gilgamesh's mom? Caleb, you can be Gilgamesh's mom. Yeah. Then Ninsun, who is well beloved and wise, said to Gilgamesh,
This star of heaven which descended like a meteor from the sky, which you tried to lift but found too heavy, when you tried to move it, would it not budge? And so you brought it to my feet. I made it for you, a goad and spur, and you were drawn as though to a woman. This is the strong comrade, the one who brings help to his friend in his need. He is the strongest of wild creatures, the stuff of Anu. Born in the grasslands and the wild hills reared him. When you see him, you will be glad. You will love him as a woman, and he will never forsake you. This is the meaning of my dream.
So once again, in the very first work of literature ever, we have another theme that's going to recur over and over and over again, and that is the bond a bond between two men that is as powerful or more powerful than the bond between a man and a woman. Whether are we to read a sexual relationship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu into here, it's simply not clear enough. But sorry, I'm spitting all over the place. Rat Maggot is going yes. Rat Maggot's going yes. But so I'll give you two examples that we will explore in a little more detail later on in the course. Two examples of stories influenced by this. Well, give me an example. What's another story like this? Achilles and Patroclus. Yes. So this story is a precursor 1,000 years later to the Achilles Patroclus story, where there is much reason to say yes, that was a sexual relationship. Homer's not explicit, but it seems to me very clear from the text that it was after they were just roommates. Also, and on the other one, I won't comment because there's on whether it is or not. There's certainly no clear indication of the text. But we'll also meet King David and Jonathan in a few weeks. There's another story that is descended from the Gilgamesh and Enkidu bonding. Okay, so Gilgamesh said,
Mother, I dreamed a second dream. In the streets of strong-walled Uruk, there lay an axe. The shape of it was strange. The people thronged around. I saw it and was glad. I bent down, deeply drawn towards it. I loved it like a woman and wore it at my side.
And then Ninsun answered,
That axe which you saw, which drew you so powerfully like the love of a woman, that is the comrade whom I give you, and he will come in his strength like one of the host of heaven. He is the brave companion who rescues his friend in necessity. Pass it down.
Gilgamesh said to his mom,
A friend, a counselor has come to me from Enlil, and
Enlil is the god of the wind.
and now I shall befriend and counsel him.
So Gilgamesh told his dream, and the harlot retold them to Enkidu. And now she said to Enkidu,
When I look at you, you have become like a god. Why do you yearn to run wild again with the beasts in the hills? Get up from the ground, the bed of a shepherd.
He listened to her words with care. It was good advice that she gave. She divided her clothing in two, and with the one half she clothed him, and with the other herself. And holding his hand, I'd like to go shopping with her, and holding his hand, and I'm fired, and holding his hand, she led him like a child to the sheepfolds into the shepherd's tents. There all the shepherds crowded round to see him. They put down bread in front of him, but Enkidu could only suck the milk of wild animals. Who else in the long story of stories sucked the milk of animals growing up? Romulus and Remus and Zeus. Yes, so Zeus first, and then later Romulus and Remus. So all he can do is suck the milk of wild animals. He fumbled and gaped at a loss for what to do, or how he should eat the bread and drink the strong wine. Let me ask you something. What is actually a healthier, more nourishing food, goat milk or bread? Goat milk, yeah. Bread's more civilized. He can't figure out the civilized stuff. He's stuck with the healthier stuff. Although you might not want to go straight to the source like he does. Then the woman said, the woman's the prostitute. Okay. Then the woman, Tyler.
Enkidu, eat bread. It is the staff of life. Drink the wine. It is the custom of the land.
What am I supposed to be teaching right now? So he ate till he was full and drank strong wine, 7 goblets. He became merry. His heart exulted and his face shone. He rubbed down the matted hair of his body and anointed himself with oil. Enkidu had become a man. But when he had put on man's clothing, he appeared like a bridegroom. He took arms to hunt the lion so that the shepherds could rest at night. He caught wolves and lions, and the herdsmen lay down in peace. For Enkidu was their watchman, that strong man who had no rival. So the great savage wild man, once he's domesticated, has now become the great hero. And yet, this is not called the Epic of Enkidu. There's really only room for one hero, so that probably won't cause any problems. Enkidu was merry living with the shepherds, till one day, lifting his eyes, he saw a man approaching. He said to the harlot,
Woman, fetch that man here. Why has he come? I wish to know his name.
She went and called the man, saying,
Sir, where are you going on this weary journey?
The man answered, saying to... we didn't do the man. The man answered, saying to Enkidu, Gilgamesh has gone into the marriage house and shut out the people. He does strange things in Uruk, the city of great streets. At the roll of the drum, work begins for the men and work for the women. Gilgamesh the king is about to celebrate marriage with the queen of love. And still he demands to be first with the bride, the king to be first and the husband to follow. For that was ordained by the gods from his birth, from the time the umbilical cord was cut. But now the drums roll for the choice of the bride and the city groans. Gilgamesh has taken, it's called prima nocta. He's taken the right of first night with every new bride in his city. And the people are, perhaps you can understand why, complaining. They are not happy to be sharing their wives with the king. Notice, the first epic hero of the first written story of all time, is already a very imperfect figure. All right, you might expect a more shallow, super duper good guy, but that's not what you get in the very first hero. At these words, Enkidu turned white in the face. Oh, maybe I should read that part.
I will go to a place where Gilgamesh lords it over the people. I will challenge him boldly, and I will cry aloud in Uruk. I have come to change the old order, for I am the strongest here.
Now, and Gilgamesh said, no. Now Enkidu strode in front, and the woman followed behind. He entered Uruk, the great market, and all the folk thronged around him where he stood in the street in strong-walled Uruk. The people jostled. Speaking of him, they said, He is the spit of Gilgamesh. So that in Southern American slang, we might say somebody's a spitting image of somebody else, meaning they look just like him, and so that's what they're getting at here. He is a spitting image of Gilgamesh. He's shorter. He's bigger of bone. This is the one who was reared on the milk of wild beasts. His is the greatest strength. The men rejoiced. Now Gilgamesh has met his match. This great one, this hero. Here, come. This great one, this hero whose beauty is like a god. He is a match even for Gilgamesh. In Uruk, the bridal bed was made, fit for the goddess of love. The bride waited for the bridegroom. But in the night, Gilgamesh got up and came to the house. Then Enkidu stepped out. He stood in the street and blocked the way. Mighty Gilgamesh came on, and Enkidu met him at the gate. Oh, Tiny Psycho's walking by. And then Enkidu stepped out. He stood in the street and blocked the way. Mighty Gilgamesh came on, and Enkidu met him at the gate. He put out his foot and prevented Gilgamesh from entering the house. They grappled, holding each other like bulls. Let's get the grapple on the screen. Yeah, you two going to fight? They grappled, holding each other like bulls. They broke the doorposts and the walls shook. They snorted like bulls, and the bulls were like bulls locked together. Boy, I said that line super good. They snorted like bulls. I'm doing it bad again. They snorted. We're staying here all day until I read this one sentence right. They snorted like bulls locked. Damn it! They snorted like.
Run again. I got this, guys.
They broke the doorposts, and they snorted like bulls locked together. They shattered the doorposts, and the walls shook. Gilgamesh bent his knee, and with his foot planted on the ground, and with a turn, Enkidu was thrown. Fall down. You should be the one beating him up. You should. Yeah, get down there and kick him. Get over. Ratman, get over here. Gilgamesh. Down. You're down. Down. Rat maggot. All right. Get off the cord. Gilgamesh, get him off my microphone cord. Then immediately his fury died. When Enkidu was thrown, he said to Gilgamesh,
I don't know what he said.
There is not another like you in the world. Ninsun, who is as strong as a wild ox in the byre, she was the mother who bore you, and now you are raised above all men. And Enlil has given you the kingship, for your strength surpasses the strength of men.
That's perfect timing. So Enkidu and Gilgamesh embraced, hug each other, and like ideal timing because class just ended. Chapter 2 tomorrow.
Literally best friends.
They really beat the shit out of each other and then went, hey, you're pretty chill. You're
Walk around a lot a bit, trying to make the pieces fit to a puzzle with a million missing pieces. When I'm feeling fine is when I discover that I'm afraid to blow my cover, and there's something very wrong with this. So slip back in your hole, or get back in your cave. If I'm going down, I'm taking someone with me.